He grew up in a crowded Manila neighborhood where music floated through every window, but very few dreams ever escaped the walls. His name was known only by the neighbors who heard him fixing old radios on weekends or humming Elvis Presley songs while sweeping the front of their tiny home. His father used to play Elvis records before leaving for long work trips overseas, and those songs became his comfort. But he never believed his voice was anything special. He thought he was just another kid singing old classics in a world that had moved on. His mother disagreed. She had heard him sing when he thought no one was listening, and every time, she felt a spark that the rest of the world needed to see. She told him he had a gift, but he always laughed and said, "Mom, people don't care about boys from the slums who sing like dead legends." But she insisted. She worked extra hours, saved coins in a jar, and finally surprised him with a plane ticket to America. He nearly refused it. The fear was bigger than the dream. What if he failed? What if he stood on that huge AGT stage and everyone laughed? His mother held his face and said, "If you don't try, your voice will stay trapped here forever." She placed the ticket in his hand. So with a cheap Elvis-style jacket from a thrift shop and one small suitcase, he stood at the airport trembling, unsure if he was making the biggest mistake or the most important decision of his life. He stared out the plane window as the Philippines grew smaller beneath the clouds, whispering a quiet prayer that maybe, just maybe, America would let him be heard. Walking onto the America's Got Talent stage was nothing like he imagined. The lights were blinding, the audience enormous, the judges larger than life. His hands felt cold, and his heart pounded so loud he was sure the microphone would pick it up. He introduced himself in a shy voice, and when he said he would be singing Elvis Presley, a few audience members exchanged looks as if expecting another impersonator with big promises and small talent. He swallowed hard, adjusting the collar of the only jacket he owned that made him feel even slightly like the legend he admired. Simon Cowell watched him with that unreadable expression that could either make or break dreams in seconds. For a brief moment, he felt the urge to turn around and walk off the stage. But then the music began. A soft guitar intro echoed through the speakers, and he closed his eyes, letting the memories of home wash over him. When he opened his mouth, the sound that came out wasn't forced, wasn't an imitation, it was raw, warm, soulful, carrying every struggle he had ever lived. The first note dropped into the room like electricity. People froze. A woman in the front row gasped. The judges leaned forward, eyebrows raised. He didn't just sound like Elvis, he carried the emotion, the heartbreak, the magic that made Elvis timeless. As he hit the chorus, the audience erupted, some standing, some cheering, others looking stunned. But he didn't see them. He was lost in the music, in the dream he never allowed himself to believe in. When the song ended, the room exploded into a standing ovation. Heidi clapped with her whole body. Sophia put a hand to her chest. The crowd chanted his name, but all he saw was Simon, silent, frozen, staring at him like he had just witnessed something impossible. For a long second, no one spoke. Not even the legendary judge known for his blunt honesty. And in that silence, the boy from Manila realized his life had just changed forever. The morning after his audition aired, he woke up in his tiny budget hotel room to hundreds of buzzing notifications. At first, he thought something was wrong with his phone. Then he opened the screen and froze. His clip was everywhere. Millions of views overnight. His name trending on platforms he had never even used before. Reaction videos with people crying, shouting, or grabbing their heads in disbelief filled his feed. Headlines popped up. Is this the Filipino Elvis? A voice that brings back a legend. Simon Cowell speechless. Who is this kid? He scrolled through comments from Americans saying they felt chills, from older Elvis fans who said they hadn't felt that magic in decades, from Filipinos around the world cheering that one of their own had touched global hearts. He didn't know what to do with all the love. He wasn't used to being seen. For most of his life he blended into the background, a shy kid fixing radios and playing hand-me-down guitars. Now strangers were calling him the second coming of a legend. He called his mother, and when she picked up, she was already crying. She told him the whole neighborhood had gathered around someone's TV to watch his audition, and the moment he started singing, people screamed like they were watching the boxing finals. Kids from the street were pretending to be him, holding toy guitars and copying his stance. His mother whispered, "I knew the world would hear you." The sudden fame felt surreal, unreal, almost too big for him to carry. He walked outside his hotel to clear his head, and even then, people recognized him. A couple asked for a selfie. Someone shouted, "Elvis from the Philippines." It made him laugh, nervous and proud at the same time. The next few days were a whirlwind of interviews, rehearsals, and messages from producers saying his clip was the most shared audition of the season. But with all the excitement came pressure too. The world had placed him on a pedestal, and he wondered if he could live up to it. The next round was coming, and he knew he couldn't just repeat the same magic. He needed to prove he wasn't just an impersonator, he was an artist. When the night of the battle round arrived, he stood backstage gripping the microphone with trembling hands. He knew this performance could determine whether he was a viral moment or a rising star. He chose a song that even Elvis tribute artists rarely touched, a ballad that revealed the vulnerability behind the legend's voice. As he walked onto the stage, the crowd cheered loudly, but he barely heard them. He stared at the darkened arena, the flashing cameras, Simon's intense gaze, and felt the weight of expectations settle onto his shoulders. The lights dimmed, a single spotlight hit him, and he took a deep breath. The first note he sang was soft and trembling, almost like a whisper dipped in emotion. The arena went silent instantly. Unlike his audition, this performance wasn't about sounding like Elvis. It was about telling a story, his story, through the music of the man he admired. Every lyric carried pieces of his childhood struggles, every breath carried the loneliness he had lived with, every note carried the belief his mother had in him. As he reached the high, aching final note, the camera caught Heidi wiping tears and Sophia holding her hands together as if in prayer. The crowd stood before the music even faded. But it was Simon's reaction that mattered most. The judge leaned forward, his face soft in a way people weren't used to seeing. When his turn came to speak, he didn't give one of his trademark critiques. He simply exhaled, shook his head slightly, and said, "I honestly have no words. What you just did, that was historic." And in that moment, with the crowd roaring behind him and the judges staring in awe, the Filipino Elvis realized he wasn't just surviving the pressure, he was rising above it. The night of the semifinals felt heavier than any moment he had experienced so far. He knew the audience expected the classic Elvis look, the jacket, the stance, the curl of the lip. But something inside him whispered that it was time to show the world who he was beneath the tribute, beneath the label that had followed him since his audition. So he walked onto the AGT stage wearing simple black clothes, no glitter, no retro flair, nothing that said, "Elvis impersonator." Just himself. The crowd murmured in surprise, some even confused. The judges exchanged looks. But he stood tall in the spotlight, gripping the mic with a calm steadiness he didn't know he possessed. When the music started, it wasn't the upbeat rock and roll they expected. It was a slowed down, haunting rendition of a beloved Elvis classic, reimagined in a way no one had ever heard before. His voice began soft, almost fragile, reaching into the darkest corners of the arena. Each lyric felt like a confession, as if he were singing to every fear, every doubt, every night he spent wondering if he belonged on a stage this big. But as the song built, so did he. His voice rose, warm and powerful, layered with emotion too real to fake. The quiet melody exploded into a soaring climax, and the entire room held its breath. When he hit the final note, raw, trembling, heartbreakingly human, the audience erupted. People leapt to their feet so fast the cameras shook. The standing ovation was instant, overwhelming, and continued so long that the producers signaled for applause to settle, twice. Heidi had tears streaking down her cheeks. Sophia looked like she was witnessing the birth of a superstar. But Simon placed a hand over his chest. He took a long moment before speaking, his voice softer than usual. "You proved tonight," he said, "that you're not here because you sound like Elvis. You're here because you're one of the greatest vocalists we've ever had on this stage." Those words hit him harder than any applause. For the first time, he felt like the world saw him, not as an imitation, not as a viral sensation, but as an artist. He walked off the stage trembling with disbelief as fans reached out, shouting his name. And for the first time, he believed that he truly deserved to be there. Finals night arrived faster than he expected. The pressure was crushing. Reporters were calling him the frontrunner, videos of his previous performances kept going viral, and everyone wanted to know what the Filipino Elvis would do to seal his legacy. Backstage, his hands shook. Months ago, he was fixing radios and singing to the walls of a tiny Manila home. Now he was about to perform live for millions of people worldwide. When his name echoed across the arena, he stepped into the fog-covered stage with a confidence he didn't recognize in himself. The band kicked in, and this time he embraced everything: his roots, his idols, his journey. He performed an explosive Elvis medley that blended powerful vocals with modern arrangements, pushing himself like never before. He threw in guitar riffs he learned as a kid, high notes that stretched the edge of his voice, and emotional transitions that made the whole arena feel like they were watching something legendary. The audience roared louder with each section, chanting his name. When the final beat hit and he dropped to one knee, the crowd erupted into one of the wildest standing ovations of the season. Simon looked at him with pure admiration. "You didn't just sing tonight," Simon said. "You created a moment people will talk about for years." And when the host opened the envelope to announce the winner, his heart nearly stopped. The arena fell silent. His name was called. He didn't celebrate. He collapsed to the floor, overwhelmed, sobbing into his hands. A boy from Manila who never believed he deserved to be seen was now standing on the biggest talent stage in the world, crowned a champion, and written forever into AGT history.